Is a church in the Metaverse still a church? For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is BreakPoint. Futurists and tech industry gurus have long promised a utopia where humans aren't dependent on pesky biological or geographical realities. Behind both yesterday's cyberspace and today's Metaverse is the same idea. In a brave new world of digital existence, humans can be freed from their bodies, from specific locations, and from all other physical limitations. Well, the rise of online technology did make it possible for churches to pivot and to continue in those early uncertain days of the pandemic. And many congregations have chosen to keep their live streaming option on offer in order to accommodate their older, their more vulnerable, or their physically distant constituents. But other churches have taken it a step or two even further. Some have opted to shut down their in-person congregation for one that is online only, abandoning their physical buildings. And somewhat even more spectacularly, other churches have started quote-unquote churches in Facebook's new Metaverse, where people or their avatars can come to church virtually from anywhere in the world and sit down virtually with other people who also join from anywhere in the world. DJ Soto, a pastor at what is called VR Church in the Metaverse, recently claimed this, quote, "The future of the church is the Metaverse. In the Church of 2030, the main focus is going to be your Metaverse campus." Now, on one hand, such an innovation is just a new chapter in a long history. Churches have always employed new technologies and methods in order to reach the sick or the infirmed, particularly in times of crisis, and to keep them connected within the wider churches. Today's technological tools make that more possible than ever. Evangelicals, in particular, have a long tradition of using technologies in the service of evangelism. Whether we're talking about the printing press 500 years ago, the newspaper 300 years ago, the radio in the early 1900s, or the TV in the late 1900s. In fact, this commentary, BreakPoint, got its start on the radio. But new technology and communication methods must always be evaluated on more than just whether or not something works. This is also about what the church is. Decades ago, Canadian philosopher Marshall McLuhan said it this way: the medium is the message. Put another way, the means used to tell a story will always shape what is said. When it comes to church, it can change the nature of the kind of people we are or think ourselves to be. People aren't just inviting the world to come to church through new technology, they're moving the church into new worlds through that technology. Such a move can have unexpected consequences. While there's certainly cause for attempts to, quote-unquote, reach people where they are, what we reach them with is always what we reach them to. We must make sure that any effort to communicate the gospel doesn't reduce the gospel down to something less than it is. Remember, Christ spoke about those who, in the parable of the sower, initially received the gospel with joy, but lacking root turned aside when growing stopped being quite as convenient. But there's also something else to consider here. A disembodied church assumes that a disembodied faith is even possible. A Christianity lived only online is just as sad as a humanity lived only online. Not to mention, it kind of encourages America's already existing choose-your-own-adventure understanding of religion on your own terms. But Christianity is about even more than just content. Rather, its content is the kind of content that cannot ever be truly lived outside of the context of real people in the real world. As Tish Harrison Warren put it recently in the New York Times, bodies, with all the risk, danger, limits, mortality, and vulnerability that they bring, are part of our deepest humanity, not obstacles to be transcended through digitization. In contrast, a cyberspace church can fall to something akin to 2013's movie Her, where an imaginary relationship with an online persona becomes preferable to the often painful and inconvenient nature of tangible reality. As someone from that movie put it, you always wanted to have a wife without the challenges of dealing with anything real. That's a line that can be said of what too many seek from the bride of Christ. The faith of our fathers is not simply attending a performance. It's not even embracing a set of ideas about God or Jesus. A church without doctrine is nothing more than a mere social club or an arbitrary special interest group. But a church that remains doctrinally correct but only connects online, that's a mere chat room. A disembodied online existence makes it too easy to hide who and what we really are from those God has called us to live with, love, and be loved by. The Christian life cannot be fully lived online. God has called us to this time and this place, to times and crises that are uncomfortable, and to people whose issues and ailments are unpleasant. The world in which God is making all things new is filled with real people and real problems, the kind that can never be fully mended in the elusive world of an online existence. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with BreakPoint.